The most widely published book in human history reveals that we are created in the image of God. Throughout our human journey, each encounter is an opportunity to see the shared humanity in ourselves and others. Regardless of one's views on religion, each experience and each story weaves us together towards a common path. A path of transformation, a process of growth and understanding, a recognition that, at our core, we share a common destiny. What does the search for truth really mean in our lives? How can we find a sense of unity in a world so diverse and divided? As we reflect on these questions, we start to uncover a fundamental connection that binds us all beyond our differences. Welcome to Created in the Image of God, Building Vibrant Communities, with our host, Wade Franson. Today's episode is Behavior and Hope.
Hey everyone, Wade Franson here, Created in the Image of God. I have a wonderful woman in the studio who I have been chasing for like a year. Not in the way that I chased my then fiance who wouldn't date me for a year, but in the sense of wanting her to be on the show. And for whatever reason, we've gone back and forth, but we finally are here now recording the show. Her name is Megan Rossello, and she is part of the Behavior Collective and has a podcast, a website called The Behavior Project. We're going to unpack who she is and what she does over the course of this next hour. So welcome, everyone, and welcome, Megan, to the studio.
Yes, thanks for having me.
And, you know, I look back at the email record and it really does go back, you know, almost a year, I think now, when we first started communicating and life has gotten so busy. But here we are now finally doing this show together.
Yeah. I guess good things wait a little bit. Yeah. So it's been some time. You're right. So here we are.
Yeah. So as we always do on this show, we want people to get to know the real you, the sort of behind the Behavior Project, including the forces that shaped you. We call it your creation story here on Created in the Image of God. So tell us who your parents were, what was unique about them, where were you born, and what was it like growing up, Megan?
I was born in Nebraska. I am a true Cornhusker. And so my parents, well, if you want to put them into a box pretty quickly, they were extremely hard workers, like a lot of parents. So my parents actually went to school when I was in junior high, back to school. So my mom was a teacher and my dad was starting out with some businesses, and he just felt God was calling him back. And it was just kind of a change in society. I guess it was a lot of need. You needed more degrees. So I remember spending a lot of time in high school at the University of Nebraska in the gym with the Nebraska football players and the volleyball players, thinking I was super cool because of that. But that was part of what I did. But I also spent a lot of time studying there in the libraries with Dad. And so I learned early on just sometimes plans go differently and you just got to follow it, but you got to put the work in. So I grew up in a family of 5 girls. I'm the oldest. They all are very successful individuals. And so that begins kind of my story. So even though I was the oldest, there's some kind of stereotypical things about the oldest, that the oldest should have it together and be the leader and whatnot. And God allowed me to have a different story. Now, I didn't appreciate it. I didn't like it. I had learning disabilities, but I didn't know until high school. I just figured I too was a hard worker in school and I had to do the hard work. You could never pop quiz me. I'd fail every time. So around high school, I found out I had a learning disability because my dad was trying to advocate longer time on tests. I think he knew. And it became a downward spiral. For education, I hated school. It was handled very, very poorly. It was handled by people that were not accredited and not licensed in the area. So there was a lot of assumptions about my birth. And I began to have a bad relationship with school, with educators. So I kind of just took whatever jobs. I just figured if I could pay my bills, that was good enough. That was, God didn't call everyone to be something great. If we fast forward a few years, I watched my sisters kind of evolve professionally and I resented it and I was very angry and I kept going back and asking God, what is the deal? If you made all your children with purpose, I don't necessarily have any. I'm just I was a nurse aide. I did kind of jobs. I did them with honor. I did them well. But I wasn't living my purpose at all. And I knew it. But I struggled with what are you doing with this LD kid? So the thing is, it wasn't talked about a lot then. And so I just had a bad relationship with it. And the people that also talked about it that I had contact with at school, they were individuals I didn't necessarily trust because they didn't handle it well. Everyone was lumped together as they weren't able to do it. As I got a little bit older, I found this behavior job as an accident. I needed a job, and a friend that I ran into through my kids that I knew years prior, ironically, she led me to a behavior job, which I knew nothing about. I just thought it was a teaching job. And that's where I found the behavior that I began to start to work in. I worked as an RBT for several years, moved to New York, worked there, and
What is
started
an
working with the
RBT?
RBT is a registered behavior technician. So they're like right under
Okay.
a board certified behavior analyst. They just carry out the plan. They do the data. They work with whoever the client is, and they just carry out the data, the behavior work. I ended up working in New York, and that was more mental health and behavior. And it just kind of began to evolve, all of that to say. And I began to find that a lot of families I worked with in the behavior world were beginning to start to ask something that I probably think my parents were asking but they didn't talk about it in the 90s. They weren't talking about it at all. It was just kind of, your child's going to have a different future. That's kind of how it was looked at. It was all doom. But it was like, tell me there's hope in this situation. Tell me that my child is going to be making it further. And the early part, I didn't know. I didn't have any idea. I'd go to whomever I was reporting to, and they'd give me like something to do, a strategy. But as I began to be kind of the manager, I found that and build a relationship, that was a big part of it. I found that a lot of these people just wanted a sense of hope. And that began after several years, the idea of the Behavior Project, which is a podcast. I figured if people were talking to me for a long time, most of the time providers, people that worked with these clients that had behavior and mental health challenges, that I could probably have a creative outlet to do that. And so the podcast began from there. And the Behavior Collective is something that has started, which is really fun. It's going to be an online platform at this point where I'll have online classes and teach like a support for those that come on, because you believe it or not, a lot of individuals that work with kids with autism or adults even with mental health or behavioral challenges, they don't know what to do with them. So the best thing to do is, for a lot of them, because they don't have these strategies and they don't have an understanding, is just give them what they want. But there's a sense of resentment, sense of anger with a lot of them. Kind of, they run the house, all the supports go to these individuals. And so I wanted them to understand, I felt it was really important that they understand that this person, whether it's your child, an adult child, a young kid, is put in your life. You work with them for a reason. You were put in their life as a parent for a reason. And you just may need to understand you have the skills because God shows you. You just may have to have those refined. You may have to have a little push and support, but you were picked. So I want them to have that encouragement rather than division, widen that hostility within the home, because that's what I saw a lot of. And then it's kind of, that individual knows it. They could sense it, even if they couldn't communicate it, they sensed it. So that's the premise behind all of it.
Wow. So that's a lot. And I think you and I must have talked about some of this a while ago, but I'd forgotten pieces of it. And, I was just really moved as you were talking about your own discovery working hard in high school. Not the least of which is because I have currently a daughter who's a senior, and she's just selected the path of occupational therapy. She works with learning disabled kids, even in high school, as part of a program. She was in a gym. She really enjoys doing that. And I'm very proud of her for that. Her mom is a physical therapist. So we got physical therapy, occupational therapy.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about behavioral therapy, exactly how it would relate to those other two, or not.
I think they all can work together, because there's that biopsychosocial of the person. Every one of us have those parts. So the physical therapy, the occupational therapy, they all address different parts of the person. The behavior looks at the behavior. And the outsiders typically think it's always the bad behavior. It's just things that you want to adjust that maybe aren't socially appropriate. They're not maybe we could do better at them. So like currently I have a student that has learned to spit. Now, part of it, he has a disorder where he creates a lot of saliva. So we're not going to stop the spitting because part of it, he's nonverbal and it's a disorder. So what we're doing is we're kind of adjusting it, shaping that behavior so that the spitting is in a specific spot. So that's stopped. That's something more socially appropriate. I've had others that you're trying to have them kind of manage their mental health. I guess it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of like suicidal ideation, manage that. So you might have a counselor that works alongside you. So I would talk to them about like, how do you talk to yourself? So that's more, it's more like the mental health side. You can work on any side of this, which is, I think, is great. It's very empowering. It's kind of exciting, but you can give them strategies. So I would walk through, I had a client that very suicidal. So every time he was feeling depressed, he would just jump to suicide. And so we would walk through like identifying who he is. And I was able to bring God into it because he's like, whatever is you can do, I'm willing to hear it. So I did. I had his permission to do it, and we did it and said, this is who you are called to be. And this is who he identifies you as. And he began to really listen. And so it's replacing the negative and the kind of the maladaptive things with something else. And that's usually what we do with behavior, just like with occupational therapy. You're teaching them something to improve a skill that they have or don't have so that they can function. So that's what a behaviorist does.
Yeah. And I probably ran ahead a little bit. Let me go back a little bit. So during that time when you were discovering this about yourself, you kind of made an initial peace with it, moved on, got certain kinds of jobs. But then you said that later some resentment began to build up because of your sisters and this and that.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't really talk about how faith entered into that. So let's go back and unpack that inner journey a little bit for you.
So that's probably several years worth, a lot of years, because they were all gifted, very athletic, all four of them on different levels. And so they began to, even in high school, I was very quiet and I was very shameful because I knew I had to work hard whatever facet that was. They didn't. And so there was kind of this, I didn't know how else to respond because no one was talking about it other than I was Casey's sister. I was Liz's sister. It wasn't, people wanted to get to know me. It was, they wanted to get to know them. And then if I came along, that was fine. So resentment set in early. I think it's when I became really aware of these things, which was probably early high school because we were in the same school. We went to a private school. And so the two that are younger than me, we all were close in classes. We passed each other because it was such a small school. So it was resentment, and it went on for a while. I wouldn't say it didn't stop for a while. The one right under me became successful immediately. And so I went to church. I did all of that. I did the to-do things if you're a churchgoer, but I really had a hard time accepting it. I had a hard time believing I was inspired by the messages, but I had a hard time believing that God did something special. I mean, he had a purpose. It was just, I was meant to be, a helper around the house. I kind of minimized it, like, okay, that's what he meant. But he meant something better. And I always felt like there was a calling, but everything wouldn't happen. Like the doors would shut. And so I would say resentment, there was shame because I don't want to talk about it, especially when all of us got together as a family. We have a pretty big family. People talk about what? When everyone gets together and they haven't seen each other in a year, it's kind of the highlights. And I had nothing. So depression really set in. I had suicidal ideation myself, and it didn't carry through with anything, but it was always this would be a better plan if I just carried through with this. I mean, it really, that carried on for a while. Until I think I don't remember something very specific that happened, but I just said enough. The enemy's got a hold of me in such a way that he's taken captive. Like I can't even see that there would be anything positive. I don't even think I'd recognize it. And so I began to just say, you've got to go. And that, I know not everyone's story ends that way, but mine was cold turkey. I think I just grew tired and I said, the enemy just has a hold of me and I'm just done with him. So it was a lot of switching my mindset, just like I do as a behaviorist. Like, I'm not going to think this. So every time I'd worry, and the thing is, you got to understand, I didn't have the support system. Yes, I have a lot of family members, but they didn't understand this part. They just assumed I was kind of rude with the more colorful word they'd call me, said that that was me, or I was lazy, and that I was just mean. But the thing is, I was so depressed because I couldn't even see that there was purpose. I couldn't even see beyond that. I was trying, like, I'd replace that mindset of every time the enemy would say, well, you're not doing this, this is what you are doing. I felt, I would have to almost lie to myself to convince myself I have purpose. He called me to something else. And
Yeah.
eventually I began to believe that. So it wasn't such cold turkey, but I didn't have to bring therapists or anything. It was just, I guess I was very disciplined in that way. But yeah, that was kind of it. I hated them though. That was the kind of thing. It's like now on this end, I would say that there's been a lot of restoration, a lot of healing, and a lot of me being able to explain my journey that they admitted they don't understand.
Yeah, so this is powerful. I spend a lot of time actually in the book of Genesis trying to really
Mhm.
get to the root of things.
Yeah.
And then also, of course, in the Torah, the Exodus, the Ten Commandments. I just had a talk recently in my family about some of the commandments. But there's this one commandment. It's the 10th commandment. It's actually kind of long. You probably know it. It says, "Thou shalt not covet." Thou
Yeah.
shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's donkey or anything that is thy neighbor's, right?
Mhm.
There's the envy part of it. But then there's the other part that I think you were talking about, which is when God came to Adam and Eve after they had taken the fruit they weren't supposed to. And we'll all recall that, the serpent had said, what? God's telling you not to eat any of the trees. He mischaracterizes what God said. Oh, you don't get to eat
Mhm.
any of the fruit here. That's pretty stingy of God, isn't it? Oh, and then, oh, he doesn't want you to eat that fruit. Oh, yeah, because he knows that when you eat that fruit, you'll be like him. You'll be wise. So the serpent was spinning and twisting the truth.
Mhm. Mhm.
But the amazing thing is then when God comes across them, God says, "Who told you you were naked?" Right? Now he created Adam and Eve naked. There was no shame in their
Mhm.
nakedness. It wasn't so he wasn't saying who told you, that basically where did you so I read that where did you get the idea that there was something shameful in who you are,
I
right?
think because like
No,
as far as my
I'm
story.
that's a rhetorical question. What I want to
Oh,
get is that there's two sides to this, right?
yeah.
Who's
Hmm.
who's putting shame on it? But then there's also the envy part of
Oh,
it,
yeah.
which then plays out the covetousness, which then plays out in the Cain and Abel story, right? So Adam
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
Eve have two kids, Cain and Abel, and Cain is jealous of Abel. And what I love, and I'm unpacking a lot here, but I think it's valuable. I don't know if you've heard me share this. I believe that the prodigal son story, the prodigal son
Hmm.
story, is Jesus flipping the script. Jesus flipped the script on a lot of things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He flips
Yeah.
the script, and in the prodigal son, the good son becomes the bad son,
Hmm.
and the bad son becomes the good son, right? The good son is Abel, and he stays with God and he's faithful to God. The bad son, in this case Cain, he says, "Screw this, I'm out of here. I don't fit." He leaves, he squanders his inheritance, ends up in a pigsty, comes
Hmm.
crawling back to his dad. His dad embraces him because that's who the father is, throws a party because that's who the father is. And now the son is jealous. The good son is jealous that the bad son got to come back after squandering the inheritance. So I just love these different stories because they help us understand. You see why I'm unpacking that?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
is that kind of part of when you talk about the enemy and rejecting the enemy? Is what were some of the things that came to your mind as you were going through this?
Uh, I just remember being like in a math class. I don't have dyscalculia, but I might as well. I was terrible at math. And I had to pass. I had to I had to get such a high score in order to move on to the next assignment, whatever it was, and I couldn't. And so you had to just come back. It was a college class, one of my first ones. And I remember just looking at it And I know in movies sometimes they'll have like the symbols of formulas and such going around. It wasn't that. It was I would just hear almost the voice of the enemy over and over again. You can't do this. You're such an idiot. Who the hell do you think you are? I will tell you, it was so audible. He could have been sitting next to me. I couldn't even focus. Now, I'm probably undiagnosed ADHD. I have to be moving all the time. But it wasn't that. I had the ability to sit, look at the task. I was ready. I was disciplined. I always showed up. Like they knew who I was because I was just going to pass this thing. But I couldn't get away from hearing that. And I would, once I passed it, like people were congratulating me because they knew that I had been working so hard on this. But then I would go right back in and I would hear this every time I would try to do something that I needed to do for school, for whatever was required. It wasn't a fun thing that when I would hear it. But those voices, when I was trying to accomplish something, that's when I would hear the enemy always say the same. It was same thing. It might as well have been a broken record. Like, you can't do this. You're an idiot. Why the hell do you think you're here? And then I just said, I'm done. And this went on for years. But that audible voice was probably the worst, just because it was so present. And I couldn't get away from it. It was just like noise in a quiet room. Nobody was saying that to me. It was what I kind of surmised, since I couldn't do these other things, or I wasn't good enough to be on whatever team or considered for whatever I was trying to do. It was a lot of you're cute, or it's thanks for trying again, Megan. And so I would always put that in the category, while my sisters, on the other hand, would try out for sport and make it, and not only be that, but they're the captain. We were on the same sport team for a while because, again, it was a small school, and of course I made it because I was the tallest one. But then very quickly, my sisters, two of them, were on that same team and doing above and beyond, being recognized and winning awards, and I was just the one that was the placeholder. So it was a lot of that I would hear, and I just said, enough, I'm done. And that began the change for me.
Wow. What year was that, the math class example?
Oh gosh, I would
High
say
school.
maybe 2011.
No, I meant what
2011.
year in your education?
Oh, it was early on.
So you
I
were already in
probably was a
college?
freshman.
Freshman in college.
Yeah.
So I had a similar experience my senior year of high school in government class. The only difference, I guess, was that I was taking hallucinogenic drugs at the time, but that's a whole nother Oprah, but I was almost overpowered, right? And I literally felt like, the enemy was in my head.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I couldn't chase him out. And it was probably made worse by the fact that I knew I shouldn't have been doing that in the first place, and I had let him in, right? I'm just saying I could really empathize with the sheer horror of that. And kudos. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, which, God willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll have a little video showing who you are and what you do now. When we come back, we're going to talk about your life's work in the Behavior Project. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of Megan Rossello.
Discover the world's religious traditions like never before with Ocean 2.0 Reader. Our custom ebook reader is designed for exploration and study with an immersive audio integrated reading experience and powerful research tools available on all platforms including web, Windows, macOS, Linux, Android, and iOS. Experience the benefits of immersive reading by combining ear and eye with improved comprehension and vocabulary acquisition. Our interfaith library features books from various religions, so you can have access to a wealth of knowledge. Try Ocean 2.0 Reader today and elevate your reading experience.
Welcome back to Created in the Image of God. I'm Wade Franson. We're here with Megan Rossello. We've just concluded that sort of coming of age, the story of her wrestling with her own challenges and overcoming, deciding to become different. And we didn't, however, talk about faith and God. How did that help? Or, when you said, when you turned it off, you went cold turkey. You had said that earlier you'd been in church and it kind of didn't really get through to you or speak to you.
No, the whole thing was a process. It was a lot of like I wanted to, my soul wanted to grow, but my flesh was like, listen, God kind of left you in the dumpster. God kind of made you, I had a nickname for myself. It was the leftover because all my sisters I'd go through and they have tremendous talents and it was great for them, but I didn't. So I was kind of the leftover. He threw together whatever he had left. So uh, there was always this yearning to want to be closer to God and have that relationship that was intimate, not just go to church, not just read the Bible, but really be intimate like God designed. And there was a lot of trial and error, a lot of me trying to figure it out. And the thing is, no one was talking about this. They'd go to church. I tried to talk to a few people and no one was having these conversations. And I knew there was something more because he asked for it. And like he intended, he wants that. He's a jealous God. He seeks you. So what does that even mean if all we're doing is praying and hoping, you do well in the test or you have enough money to pay your bills, that kind of thing? Or it's sunny when you're supposed on Friday. Something shallow is what I would hear a lot of people praying, and I just yearn for something more. And I said, so I remember having conversations. I remember talking with my mom, who still thought, I don't even know how to help her. I don't know what to do. And she admitted this later, like she was someone safe to talk to, but she didn't have, I don't say the skill set, but she didn't have like the background in knowing what to do. And there was empathy, of course. They wanted to give direction. But on the other hand, I think it's just at that point I desired, and God began to give me this hunger to want to seek. Again, I went to church. I can't say honestly that alone did it. I was inspired by lessons, but it was just getting in the Word, and admitting and having that conversation with Him. Like, I don't know, like I'm reading, comprehension is there, but it's not making a connection. And I need you to release me of this. If you want me to do what I'm purposed to do, which at that point I didn't even know, then you need to release me from this. And I began to feel like it come away. Like I said before, the commercial break, there was points where I had to change my mindset. So every time I'd hear the enemy say what he said before, those little phrases, I'd say, no, well, I'm made in the image of God, so I must be good. I just can't figure out this math. Just because I'm not good at math doesn't mean that I have no purpose. And I became a little fierce about it. And it became habitual. I would just have to replace those mindset. Now, it also meant I had to be in the Word. It also meant I had to shut out a lot of things like friends that just weren't encouraging. They just kind of kept me in that box of never understanding, not having purpose. If my family, I had to actually distance myself from family at times as I got older because they lumped me into this category of being called bitchy and lazy. Because I would just be so wrapped up in some thoughts like, this isn't right. This isn't okay. How can God be just this way? And because they didn't understand. And again, later on, we had those conversations where there has been healing and they didn't understand where I was. So there was a lot of that, a lot of like practice and getting the Word and trying to learn who God was myself without taking whatever a pastor said. Yeah, I had to learn
What
it
what
and want it.
what were some passages that spoke to you?
Oh
Certain
goodness. You know what? I'll be honest. It wasn't passages so much. It was learning who the Holy Spirit was. And I would just look up anything about the Holy Spirit. So one of the books where I go is an app called Messenger X. It's newer. John and Lisa Brovere host it. It's a family website. And they will speak on it because I'm someone that I don't want to read about this. I want you to talk to me about it.
Yeah.
And so they have several like videos on the Holy Spirit. So I'm not, I do read scripture, but I'm the worst about giving you some links. But
That's
those, I had to
that's
watch the
totally
videos.
fine, by
I
the
had to
way.
read on anything about the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit.
No, that's totally fine, by the way. So, yeah, awesome.
Mhm.
So, anything from there that you recall verbally, a story that they may have told, or was there a moment?
Yes. Yes, I can give you that. So
Yeah.
there is a book that they have written. It's in the app, which is great. So you can listen to it, you can hear them talk about it, but it's also something that you can read and digest. It's called The Wilderness. And I actually read it when we were going through a trial as a family, my husband and I. And I had to understand, why does God put you through trials? Why does He allow things like certain things happen? And I kind of read it in regards to understanding my youth and understanding why He allowed me to have a learning disability and have kind of hiccup after hiccup. Why did He allow that? when I don't think I did anything wrong. Like, I worked hard and I did the things I was called to do. I wasn't sneaking out at night like my sisters. I did all, all the rules. I was a rule follower. And what he outlined in this book is that there's not every trial is meant to look at as punishment. Like, you did something bad. That is our society, but it's meant to refine you. And so a lot of those years, it was refinement. And so when I look back, the reason I can do what I can do and I have empathy towards that population is because I walk through it. Now, the severity is different for a lot of them, but I walk through it. I understand what it's like to be misunderstood. I know what it's like to feel like everyone has told you you can't accomplish a whole lot. Like, I remember my aunt had said to my sister Casey, "You should be a lawyer." And then she looked at me and said I should be a comedian, when I am not funny. So it was always that, like, I was looked at as someone with not a lot of potential. And then my sisters,
Yeah.
you could just name them, lawyer and graphic artist and that kind of thing. There was always this never a lot of expectation. So I thought, I'm just going to dive into God, have that
Well,
relationship, and learn whatever I could
don't
learn.
this is probably somebody's probably gonna flame me on the internet for even saying this, but this is what occurred to me. I have a saying that I've used: if you can't be a good example, perhaps you can serve as a horrifying warning. That's what came to mind. But seriously, maybe that's a bad comedy joke, but I'm just reflecting here on even some of the language we use around this, because there's a religious teacher called Abdul Baha, and there's this story that comes to mind. There was a woman who just had this horrible trial after trial after trial life of, just a horrible life. And she met with Abdul Baha, and she was explaining all this, is like story after story after all the hardships. And he looked at her and he said, God must love you very much to have given you all those tests and trials, right? But even the word test and trial, and it comes from this scripture in Hebrews, which says God chastens every son whom he loves.
Mm-hmm.
And no trial for the present seems pleasant, but afterward it brings all this fruit. And then there's this weird verse which says that Jesus learned obedience through the things he suffered. And I've reflected on this. Why did he need to learn obedience for? Are you kidding me? But so the language of this fails. And then we look to analogies in nature, and we think about the butterfly, that if the butterfly struggles to get out of the cocoon, but every butterfly you've ever seen got out of the cocoon. But if you rip open the cocoon to let the butterfly out, it will never fly.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I'd have to now go look it up to make sure, but everybody knows this, right? So I assume it's true that if you somehow give too much help, it doesn't work at all. Stress is needed to stay alive. And so the way that I describe it is, God says in the end times are the horrible, tough, satanic, mark of the beast, tribulation, Armageddon, and then he says, those that love the Lord spoke often one to another. And a book of remembrance was written up, and I will remember you in the day that I make up my jewels. Now, if you know anything about how jewels are formed, they are formed in intense heat and intense pressure. You don't get a diamond, you don't get a ruby, even a pearl, right? Which is kind of a soft jewel. It's a different kind of jewel. It has to stay in this dark place forever and slowly get, layer after layer after layer put onto it. But the point is, anything that's easy, it's possible that at some point in time, the true root of who you are and what God was doing in you will surpass that of your sisters. Not that it's a competition or you want to put them down, but that's why the 10th commandment, it doesn't matter. We shouldn't compare ourselves to each other. That's a whole nother Oprah. But these trials, these tests, these challenges, they are what create the beauty, the perfection. And even some of the uniqueness of jewels, if there's a little imperfection in the environment, that will change the color slightly, give it a little bit of a different characteristic.
Yeah.
So, it's just amazing, this journey that you've had, and I listen to you and I think about what you're doing to help. So let's spend a minute talking about behavior project and the behavior collective, which I love that term. So what are these? How do they work?
Yeah, so the behavior collective, behavior project is the first thing that I started doing. It was just a podcast to talk. I actually felt like no one was going to talk. I mean, no one was going to even listen, and then it began to grow. It was really just a platform for me to kind of put out a behavior strategy and talk about it, like I was talking to a friend, and mirror it with what was scripture or what was faith intertwined with it, because a lot of times psychology and biblical stance or ideas are matching up, they're finding. And so it was easy to have those conversations and try to relate. But the goal was to look at kids with behavior problems or just being teenagers. They're tough, and really have that as the
Tell me about
cornerstone
it.
of
I have
the
two.
topic. Yeah,
I have two
they're
teenagers
tough.
right
I've
now,
got
and
one
Dad is
myself.
failing the test.
It's a test there. That alone, I didn't want to leave that out, because a lot of times parents just want to know, first of all, it's easy when there's so many things going on in the teenage years, the teenage mind, those 12 to 18 years old, where you have to remember you were equipped with mom and dad. Don't forget that, like, you were chosen to be their parent, whether you like it or not. It's often not fun. It's a thankless job a lot of times. And sometimes there are diagnoses. Like my son, we found out he had ADHD, and it was a tough several years. He was physically aggressive with people, physically aggressive within the home. We didn't know what to do, what angle. And we began to just apply everything that we knew to put it together. And we're seeing him do extremely well. But ironically, a lot of this was resentful of his younger sister, who is like my sister's, very academic, and it's kind of applying the things that I learned to him, but also with the project. That's the theme, to just empower and encourage parents, not from a stance of like I'm lecturing, but like we're doing this at the same time, just to encourage. The Behavior Collective is new. It's actually a website, thebehaviorcollective.com, and you can just find that right there. They're going to have resources. It's going to have posts on there just to encourage parents and just be a reading resource. It is going to have online courses that you can take just to build in at being the teenager, but also as the parent. So they'll have separate courses on there. So that's something I'm really excited about as well.
We're going to have to check that out. That may be
Yeah.
helpful to us. Maybe in our next family meeting, we can look at that.
Yes, do.
So we're going to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about what the feedback is on all this, some of your experiences, and where you're growing next. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of Megan Rossello, Behavior Project, Behavior Collective, Uncreated in the Image of God.
Meet Dr. Lori Schessler, a licensed clinical Christian counselor, speaker, and author with over 25 years of ministry experience. She's the founder of New Leaf Christian Counseling and holds a doctorate in clinical Christian counseling, bringing both depth and compassion to the work she does. Dr. Lori specializes in temperament therapy, a personalized, biblically grounded approach that helps people understand their emotional design and heal from the inside out. Whether working with children or adults, she helps individuals uncover the root of their trauma, anxiety, or relational struggles, and guides them toward lasting transformation. Her voice is warm, grounded, and deeply insightful, perfect for conversations around faith, mental health, emotional resilience, and identity. As someone who bridges spiritual truth with practical tools for healing, Lori offers meaningful value to listeners seeking clarity, hope, and change. An inspiring and thoughtful presence, Dr. Lori brings the kind of depth that makes every conversation feel personal, purposeful, and full of grace. Contact her through the website newleafchristiancounseling.net.
Welcome back to Created in the Image of God. I'm here with Megan Rossello. We were just talking about what she's doing with the Behavior Project, the Behavior Collective. And during the break, it occurred to me, in what sense a collective, and how do different people like latch on and become part of that collective?
Really, it's just a website at this point, but you can apply to become a member. Like there will be a membership where you can have more intensive classes. But I want it to be a resource that you don't have to just be a member, that you can come on and just get some resources that are free. And just because some people are just wanting to figure out where to start. And I don't want it to be that cost is always the thing. I think that's going to leave out and just it's going to isolate to a certain group. I think that working with people that just had nothing, just wanted a little bit of start for resources. Yeah, yeah.
So I love the fact that you're marrying scripture and, the Bible and faith to these things for those who want that. I've been a little concerned in recent years. I'm a little older and have experience. There are two sides to this coin because by all means, I'm grateful that today there are many more resources that didn't even exist when you were going through your challenges. But it seems like today there's a diagnosis for everything. Every person, has multiple diagnoses today. And then you're going down a path and medical costs and healthcare costs are soaring through the roof. And we go to a nursing home. We're a little older now. We've both had parents and others that are getting on in years. And it seems like the whole, we'll call it the medical industrial complex, is designed to make sure that you don't have a penny left at the end of your life. By the time you're put in the grave, everything you worked for over your whole life has been sucked out of you, right? So that there's nothing left really for an inheritance for your children, even because of all these possible diagnoses and problems. So I love that you have a site that maybe has a little bit more of a self-help. And just so that people don't think I'm just an old grumpy old man. No, when I was in Germany years ago, and when I was 28, I was diagnosed with a chronic crippling disease. I was told I'd be in a wheelchair at age 40 and that there was no cure, no treatment. They offered to give me cortisone injections to ease the condition. And I asked, will that help? They're like, no, but it will ease your pain. I'm like, I don't want it. So, and I was offered temporary disability, then permanent disability. But I came out the other end completely healed, completely whole, completely in remission. And the point of that's a whole nother Oprah. But the point is, while I was in Germany talking to the insurance company, and they had even more than America, they had alternative health methods, natural avenues you could choose and pick. But the one thing that I really needed was like a pass to the swimming pool, because swimming was like the best thing for me. But insurance wouldn't cover that. And I was seeking to understand why they would give me an unending series of massages. If I wanted to go have massages that would ease my pain a little bit, or go swimming, which would maybe actually help me, I could get the massages covered, but not the swimming pass. And I came down to this arguing with the German authorities, and they're very logical. And I explained, it seems to me like what you're telling me is if it's something I could do for myself, you won't help at all. But if it's something that can be done to me, you'll cover it. And I get that it's challenging to figure that stuff out, but it seems like you want to do the opposite, right? And I know there are programs, wellness programs and whatnot, you can get through your employer that sometimes give you these ancillary little things that give you some kind of minimal credit for taking care of yourself. But the whole medical industrial complex, the incentive structures around it are designed to turn you into a customer for life, in which you'll have a drug that you have to pay for every day of your life, or some other treatment or some, and you're just paying to have all this stuff done to you, but stuff you could do yourself or that your family and parents could. So I don't mean to create a false dichotomy here or paint anything as bad or evil, especially my wife, my daughter, and what you do is definitely on the side of you want insurance to cover those treatments and those therapies. They're needed and they're necessary. But at the same time, I love that you're doing this other thing that is like an online resource that's even available for free for parents and others to figure it out for themselves and wrestle with it themselves. Long-winded thing here, but react to all that.
Yeah, well, I don't know that I have a very specific answer other than I just want everyone to have an opportunity to kind of benefit from it. And yeah, of course, if you have a little bit more money, then yes, you can have the full package of everything that's there to help with everything. But I think it's important that everyone receive the help. I mean, sometimes there are people that are just trying to scrape by and just doing their best in that one little thing they can't afford. The one thing, if you pay all your bills, I don't want it to be that, okay, I got to put money aside for, the behavior collective to make sure I can be in that class. I think as it grows, then we can work on that. We can figure that out because obviously it is a business. But the goal is not to make it business first. It's really to minister to whoever. God was able to transform me, and I was able to watch other families. Not necessarily was I a big part of those stories, but I saw family after family after family that struggled. And it was just, I can't stand this kid. Like, I had parents in rooms where the kid was in the other room, and they said, to be honest, I just can't stand this kid. Sometimes the kid was a little, sometimes the kid was an adult. But the thing is, all the resources, being their money, their time, was spent on their treatment. And they can't afford it. And nothing was left. And a lot of times these were one-parent homes, and they were just tired. And siblings hate it. And I don't want to say hate, but they really had disdain for this individual that couldn't help it. And the thing is, a lot of times they can have just a few strategies. Some of those minor cases can be adjusted. I mean, sometimes it just means, mom, you got to lay off, or dad, help, you need to participate a little bit more. But sometimes when they're more severe, we just need to provide resources and share with the things we know. We need to share the wealth and the wisdom and our story. Sometimes that alone is going to help. But yeah, I really don't want to make it to be
Well,
a money
and
maker.
I
I mean,
didn't.
if that happens,
No,
I'm not going to fight it. But if
well,
I
no,
don't want
I
it to be money first, and then hopefully you benefit from it second.
Well, and I'm going to go check it out, and I'm going to see if there's some things, whether free or otherwise, that can benefit us. I'm actually endorsing what you're doing, and encouraging people, because what you're doing is a mutually cooperative thing. One of the things that when I got healthy was I told myself I am not going to be a patient. I'm not going to be patient with anything about this situation. If I had been patient, if I had been a patient, you follow me? I would have never gotten well, because they didn't really have anything to offer me anyway, but wasn't going to stop them from putting me on a lifetime program. You follow me? So I'm encouraging people, get in there, look at it, find something that can help, and by all means contribute and support what Megan Rossello is doing. I want to just share one more little, I think, so I had my own serious challenges growing up. The audience knows some of the stuff I went through, but when I resigned from the ministry in 1995, I went into teaching for 2 years. I taught at a private school, and there was a little boy in my 4th grade class, my first year in this private school, and it was an Armenian school. I won't give any more information. This is all HIPAA, but this little boy had literally been tied to his chair in this school in kindergarten or 1st grade. And everybody in the school knew this. Right. And now I'm coming in from the outside, and I have this boy in my class. And yeah, this boy was 3 handfuls. But I related to that young 4th grader. And I really, really worked hard to try to understand what was going on and to make it possible. And he couldn't sit in his chair, and his hands and everything were always dirty because he was like looking around on the floor for stuff, and he's just, but he was intelligent, but he was hard to manage. And of course they tried to tie him to a chair, and everybody knew that this was the boy they had to tie to a chair. Your heart goes out, and you did what you could, but we weren't capable or qualified. And I don't know, I only was there for 2 years. I don't know what eventually ended up happening to him, but it's one of many, many examples. He was a wonderful boy. I really enjoyed having him in my class. But so what's next then? Obviously you're working on this, you're growing it. Do you and you have a lot of energy and enthusiasm. It's really encouraging to see, to think about you struggling with these challenges and then using it as a springboard to go out and help other people.
Yeah, I think in all honesty, it's just to make this a fully functioning, active, not just website, but an online business. It's in the very starting stages, so there's a lot on there, but I want it to be where there is the membership. You can apply, you can get more like weekly kind of online courses, and you can practice it and whatnot. But I want it to be very interactive. So no matter when you get on there, there's new things, there's resources, making it really active within the community. So bringing in other resources, I think. So it's not just isolated behavior collective, me and whomever comes on with me, but bringing in other resources, because I don't want it to be where it's all about what I say and it's, you got to hear what just Megan says, but bringing in other people who can encourage and have the impact that maybe like someone like that had on others or with me, or that's the goal, is to make it a fully functioning entity of itself. That
Well,
also
I'm
not is just in Cleveland, but I would love it online, like an in-person thing eventually. So that's the
Well, I
goal.
have I have I have two ideas. The show that you're on is called Created in the Image of God. The tagline is building vibrant communities. And we
Mhm.
do that online and in the real world as well. So I
Yeah.
have two thoughts here at the end. One is, and probably we'll choose to play this commercial. So note to self and whoever's listening, this is being pre-recorded and will air. There's a group called Spiritual Playdate, which I have worked with, and the founder, Edwina Cowell. Remind me by email after this to put you two in touch and talk, because there's synergy there with what you're doing and what she's doing, because a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
the lesson plans and so forth involve some of the kinds of things that I think I hear you talking about.
Okay.
She has these
Oh,
like
that'd be good.
practical things like, teaching the kids to, having them carry a pound of bag flour around, calling it a grudgie, and how holding a grudge is physically like having to carry that
Ah,
pound of
yeah,
flour around
yeah.
all day, right? And you got
Mhm.
to let the grudge go at the end of the day. But that's one idea. The other one is, I don't know if we have this thing called the Royal Falcon Foundation, and we're into regenerative farming. We have a property here. We do camps, and we use raised bed gardens to try to build a collective around kids who will come. And there's a spring, summer, fall camp where they plant, they tend, and then they harvest, right?
Mhm.
And so these are sort of real world activities that maybe also there's something to be said there around the whole idea of gardening. And
Mhm.
this program is called Soul Seeds, and we want to like be able to just take the seed packet of the Soul Seeds program and plant it anywhere in
Mhm.
any locality, where you just need a group of 5 or more kids with one, sort of, you know senior in high school or early college age, to help
Yeah,
coordinate the younger kids around building a little group that's just going to do a raised bed garden and start planting stuff and,
yeah.
learning about nature and growing. And that's sort of behavior modifying. I don't know. Again, these are two ideas
Mhm.
that I have that we can talk about some synergies here in terms of
Yeah,
extending and building vibrant communities. What do you think
yeah.
of either of those two ideas?
I think those sound really good. I mean, I'm always open to hearing something. I don't want to always be, it's just Megan's idea and I'm not willing to hear anything else. Because sometimes there is that idea that will help it grow in a different way, or that these potential customers would benefit from and their families.
Yeah. So we're out of time. What are the final words that you would like to leave for today's audience based on this whole conversation, your life's journey, and what you're up to?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on here. Even though it took so long for us to get together, we made it happen. I would say just whoever's listening, whatever the story is, it may not be like mine or yours. Hang in there. I would say plug into what God says. There is purpose, and it's not just a cliche like church saying. There really is. Sometimes he reveals it later. Sometimes he's going to have you go through the muck because he's refining you. And just like Wade said, like the diamond comes from a lot of pressure, and beautiful things don't happen just because. So just hang in there, ask the questions, be curious, but put in the work as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Megan. And there you have it. It's a wrap up. There's one thing left to do today on the show, and that's to air the sneak peek for the show for next week. But Megan, thank you. It's such a pleasure. We will definitely stay in touch and continue to
Mhm.
try to build those cross cross-pollinate those vibrant communities together. For everyone in the audience, remember, you are created in the image of God, and God loves his creation. We'll see you next week. Hey everyone, it's Wade Franson, and it's Created in the Image of God sneak peek time. This is episode 223, airing on February 22nd, 222, and I have two beautiful women here in the studio with me. I'm so blessed today for that, and they are Lorraine Hess and Erica Strong. They are the co-hosts of a show called Beloved. Erica, I'll throw this first question to you. What is the show Beloved about?
It's about helping people to find the Spirit of God through everyday life.
And how do you do that on the show?
So we have regular everyday conversations about things that people are always going through, and then how to view that through the lens of faith, understanding that you're never alone. You have someone that's going to walk you through it, through those conversations that we have on the show, and show you how to bring that back through the lens of faith.
And Lorraine, you're a musician, and you're a Catholic. Share a little bit with the audience about the dynamic of having Erica and yourself co-host this show.
Well, Erica and I are very different and very much the same. And the more conversations we have, the more we realize how much we're alike. And it's been so much fun to tell stories on our episodes about our life experiences, our faith experiences, our triumphs, and our times that we've fallen. And it's been a lot of fun to share that with our audience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're going to learn a whole lot more. We've just actually pre-recorded the show, so we know what's coming. It's fascinating. It's exciting. It's interesting. It's wonderful. Don't miss episode 223, airing on February 22nd with Lorraine and Erica, co-hosts of Beloved. We'll see you there.